Hey, 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 you're tuned in to Robbie Shorter's The Thing About, a smooth podcast for the rough world we live in. Now available anywhere you can get your podcasts, to include Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Thank you. Please have a seat, Thank you so much, thank you. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Robbie Shorter's The Thing About, where I spend the next 30 plus minutes or so bitching, moaning, and groaning about things in society that quite frankly piss me off and make me quite sad. How are you doing today? No, seriously, I want to know, how are you doing today? Great, good, awesome. So we're going to dive right into today's subject. This is definitely going to be one of the more, shall we say, I don't want to say controversial, but this is definitely going to be one of the more taboo subjects I speak on. And because this is a very personal matter for millions and millions of people, frankly, for billions and billions of people across the world, and that is the belief in and having faith in a higher power, and something that you cannot quite explain, but you know is there, and that is the belief in a God, the belief that there is someone up there in amongst the heavens, amongst the cosmos, that is guiding the hand and guiding the fabric of the universe every day, that's been doing it for billions of years prior to human existence and will continue to do so for another billions of years after humanity's end. So I understand that, and let me just preface by saying this, because one of the things I would like to accomplish in this episode of my show is taking away a lot of those misconceptions and frankly stereotypes that people have about atheists and agnostics and people who just frankly don't subscribe to the belief of any particular god or gods or goddesses or whatnot. So I hope that this is definitely not meant to be a conversion session. If you believe in God, if you believe in a higher power, this is not supposed to, my goal is not to convince you to not believe in God anymore. That's not what I'm aiming to do. What I am aiming to do, for those of you who do believe in God and were willing to tune into this episode of my show, thank you very much. This is just to explain to you why I personally do not subscribe to the belief of higher powers. And it is also meant for those of you who may very well share my opinion that, there is no divine being guiding the cosmos and whatnot, to let you know that you're not alone and that there are like-minded individuals out there who share your beliefs or lack thereof in the existence of a higher power. But again, I'm not here to attack religion. I'm not here to demonize religion. I believe in the constitutional right that people have of freedom of religion. I believe as long as you're not hurting anybody, as long as you are not trying to impose your personal religious beliefs onto the masses or onto people who are quite capable of coming to their own conclusions and having their own thoughts and opinions, to people who may very well have their own, religious beliefs that they subscribe to, and they may not necessarily agree with or subscribe to yours. I'm perfectly fine with it. I'm not anti-religion, but I am anti-imposing religion on the masses, whether that's people who may very well believe in a religion other than Christianity, or people like myself who don't believe in any such higher power thing. So let's just take some time to get into it now. So, to give y'all a bit of background about me, I grew up with my mother. My mom she's a single mom. I've raised two kids, myself, and then I have an older sister. She has severe autism, and so I had to grow up pretty quickly, quicker than I would prefer, because, I had to help my mom take care of my sister. So, sometimes I didn't necessarily have the luxury of being able to hang out after school or go on like overnight trips or hang out with the boys and the squad after school. I'd have to be home and take care of my sister, which I was perfectly fine with. I mean, at the time, yeah, I may have been a bit of an asshole about it, because, who isn't when they're 14, 15, 16? You think you've got the whole world figured out. So, mom's fucking cramping my style here. I'm just trying to go out with the gang. But my mother was and still very much is, a Baptist Christian, I believe. And I was brought up in a Baptist Christian household. Now, granted, it wasn't quite as conservative as it might be for many of you listening to this. It wasn't really a mandatory, I go to church every Sunday. It wasn't really, go to church every Sunday. You got your Bible study in the morning, and then you'd go off to your actual service, and then you'd come back for youth group and that sort of thing. Church on Sunday, Bible study on a Wednesday or a Thursday, then maybe after Bible study, you'd have choir practice and whatnot. I didn't really have that experience per se. I remember attending church at the Salvation Army. There's a community center that's about really like a 25-minute walk from where I live in Chicago. It's called the Ray and Joan Kroc Center. And I remember when I was a young buck, I would go to church there every Sunday, or almost every Sunday. I remember sitting in the pews. I remember, listening to whoever the officer, whoever the lieutenant, because in the Salvation Army they have ranks quite similar to the military and whatnot. But I remember you'd have either a captain or you'd have the major go up there, and they'd be the one responsible for delivering the service. And then, you'd have, of course, the collection pot would go around, said, hey, let's give God some money here, give the church some money. I'd put in $1 here, $1 there. I'd go to Bible study. I'd go to youth group Bible studies. I remember I have pretty fond memories, actually, of most of the people I had Bible study with and whatnot, and we all got along really well. I remember when it was 2014, I want to say, we went to Wisconsin to this place called Camp Wonderland, or Wonderland Camp, one of the two. And it was basically a Christian, Bible study retreat where we live out there. Think Camp Rock, but Christian, the Christian version of Camp Rock, Disney's Camp Rock. Think that, but Christian. I had that experience for a couple of days, and you know what? I enjoyed it. I genuinely did enjoy it. So I'm not saying all this to say that I have had a horrible experience, being a Christian, which is why I now consider myself an agnostic atheist. That's not the case. The reason I consider myself to be an agnostic atheist is that just based upon my own life experience and based upon just going through this life day to day, especially as I started not going to church quite as much and having a real honest introspective look at myself to realize, okay, do I really believe that there is somebody up there looking out for me? I came to the conclusion, really, while I was still very much in in that life and living the life of a Christian, that no, I don't. But I felt it necessary to just kind of go along with it because, there's a lot of social pressures that go into this. You have the sense of community. You don't want to lose that sense of community because you have other, who you believe to be like-minded Christians there who are about your age, and you're all just, trying to get through life, but at the same time, going to church and going to service and participating in all of these events that are aimed at, developing your relationship with God or whatnot. It gives you a real sense of community. So that's why I was kind of reluctant to let go of my faith, because I felt like I did feel like I belonged. I didn't feel like I didn't feel ostracized per se. The other factor was my mother. Quite frankly, she is a pretty, she's not, maybe, I wouldn't call her like an extremist, ultra-Orthodox Christian or whatnot, but she is very much a baby boomer, and baby boomers do tend to be very devoutly religious people. That's just the way demography works, especially for people of older generations. They do tend to be much more firm and assertive in their faith and what they practice and believe in. So, and I was a angsty, horny teenager. She was going through menopause. That just wasn't a battle I was ready to fight. You got to pick your battles carefully. So That's just not one I wanted to engage in, so I opted not to. At some point, I did, I guess, come out of the closet and tell her, hey, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in this anymore. And frankly, I don't think I ever did, but I think I was just kind of going along with it because it was the social norm and I didn't want to rock the boat. But as I got older and I just started having, I just started living life more, I realized, and this is just me personally, I realized that, you know what? I'm not really convinced that there is a God. And there are quite a few factors that go into this, but let me just get a few things straight about what it means to be an agnostic atheist. So let's just zero in on this for a moment. So there are two components to being an agnostic atheist. You have there's the agnostic part. What does it mean to be agnostic? Well, according to AI Google, an agnostic person believes that the existence of God is unknown or unknowable. So there's that part. And then there's the second part, which is an atheist. And, if you put the word a in front of anything, it becomes not. So if you're a theist, you do believe in the existence of at least one God. If you are an atheist, then you are somebody that does not believe in the existence of any particular God. So if we put those two together, I am agnostic in the sense where I don't think there is any way to scientifically prove the existence of God. I cannot go out there and definitively tell you that God does not exist. There are plenty of atheists out there who will strongly assert that there is no God. I'm not one of them, if only because there's just no way to really prove that. Now, I know people who do believe in God are obviously going to have something to say about that, and I'll get to that in a moment. But the agnostic part for me is just the simple fact that I don't believe there is any way to definitively scientifically prove that God exists. So that's kind of where the atheist part comes in. Given the evidence or lack thereof for God's existence, I can only come to the only logical conclusion that there is no God at all. And let me be more specific, because what happens in a lot of circles, especially in certain religious circles, is that people have all sorts of reasons as to why people are atheists. So, well, you're an atheist because, you're just mad at God. That's a really bad argument. I am not an atheist because I'm mad at God. I'm not any angrier with God than I am with the Easter Bunny or with Tinkerbell or with the Loch Ness Monster or El Chupacabra or whatnot. I'm not going to waste my energy, expend the energy being mad at something that I'm not even convinced even exists in the first place. So what sense does it make for me to be mad about it? I'm not an atheist because I'm going through this rebellious teen phase where, oh, well, you're just mad at God because you got rejected by that one bitch while you were in high school and you prayed that, God would, be kind enough to let y'all go out on a date, and she ultimately said no, so you've been holding it against God ever since. No, I personally am not that petty and stupid where I would hold something like that, or really anything in general, against, any being that purports to be a God. No, that's just a bad argument. So that right off the bat is one misconception. Misconception number two, well, you are an atheist because, according to people who may very well be religious, and again, this isn't me trying to paint broad strokes. I know there are plenty of people of various religions or lack thereof who get along just fine with people of various religions or lack thereof. But there are people out there who are going to see the word atheist and they're going to be like, oh, ooh, it's going to raise some eyebrows. So this, again, that's what the purpose of this episode is to educate a bit more. Here's another thing. You're an atheist, well, you never truly believed. Again, that's not really a good argument, because if you look statistically speaking, a lot of people who identify as atheist do have a background in the church or do have a background in religion or practicing religion. At some point, they made the decision that, you know what, I don't think I really buy into this anymore. But not every atheist just pops out of the womb, out of their mom's hootie ha deciding to be an atheist. A lot of people do very much grow up, as I did, in very devout conservative Christian, or insert whatever religion of your flavor into it. They do come from a religious background, and after being in that religion for so many years, and they start to see too many inconsistencies between, what the Bible and what God purports versus the day to day of their actual lives. It becomes too much for them to want to say that, yeah, there's a God here. So no, that's another really bad argument in my opinion, as far as, well, you never truly believed. Yeah, there may be plenty of atheists who just from a young age were never really exposed to religion and whatnot, so maybe that's why. But in my experiences, most of the people I've met, again, this is just in my personal experience, they're not atheists because they just want it to be. They're atheists because prior to becoming atheists, they were very much religious. They did, in fact, believe in a God. They may have even very well wanted to believe in a God, but ultimately they came to the conclusion, based on the lack of evidence, that, yeah, I don't think this person exists. So that's another reason. Another argument that people tend to make, not every Christian, not every person of faith, but a disturbing amount of people, especially evangelical Christians, those devout, loving, God-fearing Trump supporters. Another argument they would make is, oh, well, if you're an atheist, then what's stopping you from acting on your worst impulses? What's stopping you from living a life of sin? If you don't believe in God, if you don't believe in the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit to keep you centered and to prevent you from acting on those sinful, wretched impulses that you've been born with, and that our Lord and Savior had to die on the cross for you to be forgiven for, so you'd have a chance to enter the pearly white gates of heaven upon Judgment Day. Well, it's quite simple, folks. Because I just do. It's just one of those things where this is me personally, I don't need to believe in a higher power to be a good person. That's just the way it works for me. And frankly, I think that's a really bad argument yet again, because you have plenty of really good, wholesome, fun, caring, charismatic people who are not religious and don't believe in the existence of a God. And conversely, you have people who are just flat out complete fucking assholes who do allegedly purport to at least believe in God. So I think it's a really poor argument to assume that, well, just because you don't believe in a God means you're just automatically an immoral person or you're not capable of being a good person. That's bullshit. There are plenty of Christians out there who are frankly the scum of the earth and bastardize and weaponize their religion in order to impose their beliefs on the masses, especially when it comes to things such as the LGBT community, especially when it comes to transgenders, especially when it comes to, things such as abortion and whatnot. They use their religion as a weapon to justify their bigotry against other groups. And that's one of the things that really turned me off from religion in general, because I didn't appreciate how it was being used as a tool, as a weapon to justify doing all this horrible shit, as we have seen from a lot of politicians, especially the more right-wing conservative politicians who, put on the armor of God to justify, being bigots, whether it's against gay people, whether it's against lesbians, whether it's against the transgender community, frankly, whether it's against black people and Mexicans in general. These are the same people who go out there and say, oh, yes, I love the Lord, and he died for our sins, and we should love thy neighbor, and we should live in accordance to the 10 Commandments, and this and that, and yada, da, da, da. But then they're also the same people you'll find, swinging around a Trump 2020 or a Trump 2024 flag, or the same people that you'll find, at a white supremacist rally saying that Jews will not replace us or whatnot. So I don't really think believing in a God automatically gives you the moral high ground, because frankly, there are plenty of people who do believe in God who also believe that, Negroes are not equal to the superiority of the Aryan race, which is another way of saying, colored folks are lesser than white folks. It's the same thing. And that's another thing that really concerns me, especially about religion. And it's the Bible itself. I would say the quickest way to become an atheist is to just read the Bible. There is no better piece of literature you can read that will turn you into an atheist faster than the Bible itself. Because if you read that thing from cover to cover, as I have done, and as I have continued to do, just as a little refresher to myself, you'll realize just how fucking ridiculous it truly is. I mean, we've got stories about the whole thing kicks off with a divine supernatural being who created the entire universe in 6 days and rested on the seventh. And then he created a man out of what? And then he created a woman from the rib of that man. And this is all according to the book of Genesis, the Old Testament. I know a lot of people are going to say, well, we don't really live in the Old Testament. We live in the New Testament. Okay, well, we'll get to that in a future episode or whatnot. But in any case, it's ridiculous to me. The whole concept that basically human suffering was caused by a woman who made the decision to eat a fruit from the apple of the knowledge of, what was that called? Yes, it was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So according to the book of Genesis, in Genesis 1, God created the earth, and then he created Adam and Eve were living in this paradise utopia together, butt-ass naked, no less. They were living in this paradise utopia, and then God said, hey, y'all have free reign to do whatever you want, and you can, eat whatever you'd like. All the animals, you have full dominion over them. All the plant life and vegetation, you have full dominion over that. The only thing you don't have any control over, and I want you to stay away from, is this tree, this one specific tree. You may not eat the fruit from this tree, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. For if you do, you're going to frickin' die. So that seemed like a pretty reasonable request, I guess, until Eve gets tempted by a talking snake. Eve eats the tree, or eats I believe, an apple from the tree, convinces Adam to do the same. They both eat from the tree, realize that they've both been buck naked this whole time. They get embarrassed and shy. They hide away from each other. God steps in and is like, hey, what's going on? Why aren't y'all walking around naked and observing, getting involved and enjoying the glory of my creation? And they snitch on one another and whatnot. And God gets upset because, hey, y'all did the one thing I told you not to do. So guess what? Humanity is going to suffer and die because Eve, a woman, ate from this tree after I, a man, specifically told her not to. So, that kind of, right off the bat, I mean, it's a fun story, but it's kind of ridiculous to assume that all of human suffering is because a naked lady ate an apple from a tree that a mystical higher power said she has no business eating from because a talking snake talked her into it. So, yeah. And then it goes on and on with more just ridiculous, impossible stories. You have people living to be impossibly old, like almost 800, 900 years old. One section of the Bible is literally just a long, drawn-out anthology of everybody who's related to each other, or this person's related to this person, and that person's related to that person, and that person's related to them, and they're related to them, and that was pretty boring. Then there's also the simple fact of Noah's Ark, which is an impossibility on top of an impossibility, because one, how on earth could you possibly build a structure big enough to contain one, or I guess two, of every animal on planet Earth? So you need one male and one female, so that way they can reproduce and repopulate the earth, because, God got really pissed off with how evil and corrupt the world he had created and the human beings he had created had become. So he decided to drown everybody. very reasonably so. And yeah, so he leaves Noah and his family alive. He spares them, says, hey, build this boat, get on the boat. While you're at it, take 2 of every animal in existence on the boat with you so we can repopulate the earth. And yeah, I'm going to let it rain for 40 days and 40 nights. Nobody's going to survive except everybody who is on this boat is going to survive. The rest of humanity is going swimming. But that's just kind of ridiculous to me because there's no way, maybe, I don't think there's anything wrong with me, but I just can't look at the Bible as a logical piece of work. There's nothing logical about having 2 of every animal on earth, considering you've got herbivores, carnivores, omnivores. It would turn into a bloodbath. What would you do with all of the shit on the boat? How exactly do you keep all the animals from killing each other? I mean, I guess the argument could be made that, oh, well, sure, God may have, cast a spell or something to keep the animals, calm and cool until they had a chance to get off the boat. But again, the Bible never really says he does that, so you just kind of have to assume and go with it. So yeah, also there's incest in the Bible. I believe there's these 2 sisters fucking drug and date rape their own father. So that's kind of crazy. You've got, let's see what else. I mean, it's just, you can read it for yourself. And I encourage you to. I encourage people to actually read the Bible, but read it for what it's worth and not for what people want you to perceive it as, which is another thing about the Bible. What is the Bible supposed to be for? Is it supposed to be the story of God, the story of Jesus, the story of humanity, or is it supposed to be a guidebook to how to live your life? If that's the case, I can't say I really care for the order the Bible is written in, because the Bible is written chronologically, Genesis 1, then Genesis 2, and so on and so forth, as opposed to being written thematically. So it makes it kind of difficult to find the Bible verses that may apply to a particular situation that you're going through. Are you starving? Are you hungry? Well, you need to find a Bible passage about perseverance and being strong to get you through those tough times. You're going to be flipping through that thing for quite a while. Are you dealing with heartbreak and loss? Again, because the Bible is written in chronological order as opposed to thematic order, you're going to be doing a lot of flip-flopping through those pages. Again, biblical scholars and people who have been in the church and whatnot for many, many years, I'm sure they know the Bible, or they know their way around it like the back of their hand. But for more, I suppose, casual practitioners of the faith, that's not an easy thing for them to navigate through. Granted, we've got the internet, we've got the digital age, you can get the Bible on your phone, so that definitely speeds things up quite a bit, but that's kind of a grievance that I have about it. Another reason why, I guess, ultimately I'm an atheist is because there's just, an agnostic atheist at the very least, is because there's just too many inconsistencies between what God can purportedly do and what's actually happening day to day in our lives and in reality. Would an all-powerful, benevolent God really give us Donald John Trump as president? I would argue no. I think if God were as benevolent as he is purported to be, he wouldn't allow Donald Trump to become president in the first place. That's just my personal opinion. And that raises a really paradoxical question. If God is benevolent, if God is omniscient and benevolent, he knows everything that is ever going to happen in your life from before you're even conceived, before you're even ejaculated, to the moment you draw your final breath. If God knows every decision that you're ever going to make from the age you're old enough to start making independent decisions to the day you die, is that really free will? Is it really free will if I already know exactly how your story is going to play out from start to finish? if that's the case, I would argue it's not. It seems like I'm just living my life on this already predetermined, preset path that God has purportedly laid in front of me. Because again, he knows everything that I'm ever going to do with my life from day one to day whenever I freaking die. And I would argue that's not really free will if every choice that you make is really just a predetermined choice that God has already made for you. And at this point, you're just kind of, your life is really nothing more but just autopilot. You're just doing exactly what God has already planned for you to do. I don't think that's free will. Here's another thing. Why is it that every time bad things happen, oh, let me go back a little bit. Why is it that every time good things happen, you get into your dream school, you land your dream job, you get a promotion, you're finally able to have a kid, start a family and whatnot, you get married, you finally lose your virginity, I guess. Why is it when good things happen, God seems to get all the credit for that? But when bad things happen, you get divorced or broken up with, you experience a miscarriage, you experience a stillborn, you get into a car accident and lose the loss of your legs, somebody you love and care for dies, you flunk out of college. Okay, well, I'll take that one back. That's definitely more so your fault than it would be a higher powers. But you don't get accepted into a particular major or a particular program or whatnot, even though you are extremely competitive for it. Why is it when every time good things happen, God gets all the credit? But when bad things happen, it seems like God doesn't really have to take any of the blame for it. It usually just boils down to, oh, well, this is part of God's plan, or, the good Lord works in mysterious ways, which I always kind of took as I have no fucking idea why this happened to you. This happened to you because, and that doesn't satisfy me as a really good explanation, especially if you want to sit there and tell me that there is this all-powerful being up there who is willing to guide me through all my challenges and tribulations. Well, that raises a pretty big question. Like, why even make me go through that in the first place? Why do good things happen to bad people? Why do bad things happen to good people? Take somebody like Donald Trump and Elon Musk. These two gentlemen, these two bastards, quite frankly, have managed to fail their way up in life. They're just these privileged jack-offs that don't have to really play by the same rules as everybody else. One of them actually got to be president for 4 years and completely fuck us over, especially when it came to his COVID response. Why would God allow somebody like that to have control, to have that much power, as opposed to somebody like, I don't know, not saying I really wanted to have Hillary Clinton as president, but would she be better than Trump? Absolutely. But why not her? Why do we have to get Donald Trump? I know statistically and politically the answer to that question is a bunch of disenfranchised, white people who are like, oh, I guess after 8 years of having a black dude in office, we need to balance it out by having this piece of shit white dude, wealthy white dude in office. But I don't want to get on a whole political tangent. But in any case, yeah, that's another thing that kind of disturbs me about religion. And then I'll say one last thing is just the fact that what makes Christianity the correct, or I guess the quote-unquote correct religion? Because we have to keep in mind, folks, there are literally hundreds of religions to choose from. Heck, even within Christianity itself, there are multiple denominations of Christianity you can choose from. I mean, seriously, you can be Presbyterian, you can be Catholic, you can be Methodist, you can be part of the Assemblies of God, you can be Protestant, you can be, there's Anglicanism, there's the Church of God in Christ, there's Mormonism, there's the African Methodist Episcopal Church, there's the Restoration Movement, there's Baptist, as I mentioned earlier, there's Evangelical Free Church of America, there's Seventh-day Adventist Reform Movement. Why are there so many different denominations of Christianity if God is supposed to be this great all-powerful communicator? Why can't there just be one religion, one variation, and that's it. Because God makes it pretty clear in the Ten Commandments that thou shalt worship no other God than him. There are no other gods but him. But somebody who believes in a polytheistic religion, such as Buddhism, well, they'd very much love to have a conversation with you because as far as their religion is concerned, there are multiple gods that you need to be praying to and that you need to give credit to, not just one. So what makes Christianity the correct religion? What if the Mormons are correct? What if people who are Islam are correct? What if Buddhists are correct? What if Hindus are correct? Or, in my opinion, what if the atheists are correct and there really is no God or there are no gods and it's just a concept that we came up with to help us explain things that we couldn't explain and help us deal with things that we didn't know how to deal with because we didn't have the technology, the science, and the understanding to understand how our world worked beyond, God must have done it. So, yeah, that's going to do for this particular episode, folks. There will be a part 2 to this, and I think I will invite somebody else to jump in, but I just want you to chew on this for a while. In the meantime, again, I am not anti-religion. I do believe that there is a place for religion, but it doesn't belong in science. I will say that much. So when you have these debates between somebody like Bill Nye, the science guy, and Ken Ham, the dude who spent, like $1 billion to build a replica of Noah's Ark, science and religion are not equals. Science is based on things in reality that can be tested and that we can find evidence for, that can be proven to be factually true. Everybody's all like, well, especially in the religious community, they're like, oh, well, the theory of evolution was just that. It's a theory. Well, in the scientific community, a theory is actually a very well substantiated explanation for how something in the natural world works that is based on ample evidence. So yeah, that's going to do for this episode, folks. I hope I didn't shake the boat too much, but you knew what you were getting yourself into when you clicked on this episode. Hope you enjoyed. If you didn't, sorry, but sorry, not sorry. And yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Have a great day or night or evening and take care. Bye-bye. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. You're too kind. You're far too kind. Thank you.